is Terry Bradshaw, quarterback, Pittsburgh Steelers.
It's 7:15. There's a new home run champion of all time, and it's Henry Aaron.
This is baseball, Major League Baseball. And this is
ABC's Monday Night Baseball, live from Fenway Park in Boston, Massachusetts.
Looking. He's under the gun. He's tied. He throws. It is.
On the cover of the July 21st, 1975 issue of Sports Illustrated were two future Hall of Famers. Back then, SI called them baseball's toughest pitchers, Jim Palmer and Tom Seaver. More on those two great pitchers in a bit. But first, welcome to the Past Our Prime podcast. Bill Mahoney and Mark Hoffman joining me, Scott Johnston, as we go through another week of SI from half a century ago. Mark and Bill, how the two of you guys doing? Nobody cares, but I have to ask. All right, moving on.
Exactly right.
Really good.
I don't think there's one listener going, I hope Mark and Bill are doing well. I care. Yeah.
Hey, since we're a little more than halfway through our second year of the Past Our Prime podcast, let me ask you both a moment or a guest or anything that jumped out at you in the first 6 months of season number 2. Bill, you go first.
Okay. I'm going to talk about one, Jeff Fierzig. He was a director of the movie Wepner, starring Liev Schreiber. But he talks about the Stallone-Wepner relationship. And from the outside, you look at it and you think, man, Stallone screwed Wepner. But then you realize Stallone did what he could to get Wepner in a movie. Tried to take care of him. Yes, he took a lot from him, but he wasn't as evil as you would think going in. And I like the way that Fierzig explained to it. Chuck was, as drunk as heck, and, he went in and didn't know what he was doing. You sort of feel for Wepner, but I also understand Stallone as well.
Yeah.
And then Jim Kern was great.
Oh, yeah.
Jim Kern is the one guest that we've had that really took us inside the dugout. Inside the game. Remember he talked about Boog Powell that, I can't get this guy out. And Boog Powell, explains to him and says, you got to pitch this way. And then on the field, he goes, effing rookie. We have not really gotten a lot of guys that'll take us into the dugout. And I love that.
Yes, absolutely. Character for sure. Mark.
God, there were so many. I mean, I could say marathon swimmer Lynn Cox, who helped achieve peace between Russia and the U.S. with their swimming, back in the 70s and 80s.
Yep.
Or I could talk about my friend, Dr. Michael Levi, who was John Wooden's doctor and was there. He treated him all at the end for his foot every 6 to 8 weeks and was there in his deathbed. And what Wooden said to Bill Walton about playing with his beard at the end, because Wooden had grown a little bit of a beard towards the end. I mean, there's just so many unbelievable great stories that we've done this year. It's hard to pin one guy down, a person down. I mean, Jan Calso, whose husband Bob, the only NFL player to die in Vietnam, and we're talking about it. Or Leo Ullman, the Nolan Ryan souvenir collector, who was a Holocaust survivor, and then later lived in an attic, was hiding like Anne Frank in Holland from the Nazis, and then comes to the States, becomes a U.S. Marine, a lawyer, successful businessman.
Yeah.
I mean, there's just so many good stories.
Yep. I'm very proud of all of them. I loved, you go back and you look and I'm like, oh gosh, I forgot about this. But you remember Curry Kirkpatrick talking about Cheryl Tiegs and the letter she wrote him?
Yes.
Because he wrote an article about her, like on the 40-year anniversary of her being on the cover. Or I think it was 40, but I'm not sure. And she hated what he wrote. And it was, because he kept mentioning oh, that's what it was. She was 40 years old, and he kept mentioning, oh my gosh, how good she looks for 40. And she was like, have you never seen someone 40 years old before? It was
funny. And Curry was trying to make it complimentary. He thought he was the ultimate compliment.
And then I also loved the one we did with Joshua Prager on the 51 Giants and their cheating scandal. And just like you were saying, Mark, you talk to these people and, Jan Kalsu's telling us about her husband, Bob, the football player. And of course, it morphs into her being a widow and him dying and in Vietnam, and same with Leo Ullman. We have these people on because there is a sports connection, like you mentioned, Lynn Cox. So we're talking to Joshua Prager, and you do a little research on him, and you find out he was in a car wreck in Israel when he was in a bus, I think, and a van hit him, and he breaks his neck and he's paralyzed. He can now walk, I think, with a cane, but I mean, these people just go through.
And he went and faced him.
Right? He went back to
talked
Israel.
To the guy too, and didn't get the answer that he was hoping that he would get.
He did not. He certainly didn't. So yeah, I mean, so there's probably 10 of them we just off the top of our heads. And then, guys like Marty LaQuarrie and Frank Shorter talking about Prefontaine, and yeah, good stuff, guys. Plenty of good stuff. Go back, download them, review them, do us a favor, and spread the word. You'll your friends will like the show, I'm pretty sure. So, scorecard, Mark.
Well, I've got this one saying about, Pele, to try to popularize soccer in the United States. He's doing a barnstorming tour going all over the country. And he got to the White House, and President Ford, was there, and they autographed soccer balls, and there were plenty of soccer balls around. And it's amazing what 2 years difference makes, because back in 73, Pele went back to the White House, and President Richard Nixon at the time greeted him. But at the last minute, they scrambled to get like one soccer ball for him to autograph. And instead, they had mistakenly ordered 24 volleyballs for the occasion. So that's how times have changed.
We're making progress. We're making progress. And, that's another thing I love is almost everything now we can be like, oh, yeah, well, Pele. Well, we did a story on Pele.
Right.
Because, at the end of June, we had Michael Lewis on, an author and journalist who spoke about the arrival of Pele in the U.S. We're getting the 60 minutes of separation are becoming less and less and less. Billy?
Can I also want to tag team on that, Mark's comments about the volleyballs going to the White House?
Sure.
A few months ago, or about a year ago, Callie and I like to go kick a ball at the park. So I went out and just bought a real cheap little ball. I knew it was a volleyball. So I thought, well, let's go kick a ball, tell it's her soccer ball. About 2 months ago, I brought the ball out, and Callie goes, we can't kick that around, Dad. That's a volleyball. Dang it, man. Can't get by with it.
What are you, Dad, an idiot? Don't you know?
She called me right out on it. She goes, that's a volleyball. So, and I thought, darn, I was just trying to get a ball for us to kick around. So she knows her soccer balls from her volleyballs, unlike the White House back in the day.
Right.
6.
Good.
It's round. It's a ball. It works.
That's what I said. But I was going to talk about Calvin Murphy. He was at 5'9". He was the smallest player in the NBA. But he recently returned from a visit to Japan, where he spent a lot of time shopping for clothes. He said, most of the clothes don't fit me. The large size is a small size in the States. I couldn't buy many things. But the trip did enhance Murphy's ego, if not his wardrobe. I felt good over there, he confesses. I felt very large.
Mark?
They said it?
Yeah, go for they said it.
I got Joe Garagiola, the former Cardinal, former announcer, former, like you'd see him hosting game shows. He did everything.
Yep.
Anyway, he says, I know a baseball star who wouldn't report that his wife's credit cards had been stolen. Okay. Because why? Because the thief spends less than she does.
He was always good for those kind of lines as well. Yeah, and like you said, drafted and signed by the Cardinals. Another person that's happened to recently.
Oh, yes, that is true. So I remember this kid named Jack, and he went to preschool with my daughter, Caitlin. And so I knew him when he was 3, 4, 5 years old. And the family lived like 2 blocks away from us. Very nice family. The dad was always riding his bike in the neighborhood. Mom, super nice lady, Michelle. Anyway, about 3 years ago, I have the LA Times, and it says top local baseball players, high school baseball players. And it had Jack Gervich, which was this kid's name, Jack. And he had played at Notre Dame High, which has produced a lot of ball players. And he was listed as one of the top local kids. And they was going to play college ball at the University of San Diego. So I thought, oh, that's nice. He'll be a college player. So once in a while, I just checked for San Diego, and maybe I saw stats, maybe I didn't. Nothing just struck me as anything. Well, they had the Major League Draft the other day, and all of a sudden I'm looking online and I see St. Louis Cardinals, third round pick, Jack Gervich, first baseman, University of San Diego. I'm like, whoa. So this is a kid who's used up his college eligibility. And when you're drafted that high, you're going to play in the minor league system. They're not wasting a pick and not playing you. So that's great. He's going to be a professional baseball player.
I got one. John Reeves, the Philadelphia Eagles' seldom used quarterback after being traded to the Bengals for 2 players. Finally, looks like I helped the team. Got 2 players for a guy who never played. Billy, you got one for us?
Yeah, golfer Miller Barber. I don't say my golf game is bad, but if I grew tomatoes, they'd come up sliced.
Very good, Miller.
Got hooked.
He was another one that was very good with the quips.
Yeah.
I love that they said it. It's one of my favorite parts of the magazine.
Yeah.
It also takes about 30 seconds to read.
Yeah.
Yes.
Time for our cover story. Kings of the Hill again by Ron Firmwright. Jim Palmer and Tom Seaver had injury-plagued seasons in 1974, but in 75, these two are back at the top of their game. Palmer won the Cy Young in 73, Seaver in 69 and 73. Palmer wins 20-plus games from 70 to 73, but last year, Seaver had an 11-11 record and Palmer was 7-12. Mark, what was the deal with these guys?
Well, they were all dealing with kind of injury things. Palmer had some elbow injuries in the spring of 74, and then all of a sudden he developed like something with like his hip or something. And they were talking about doing surgery and stuff like that. And then they said, well, you know what? Let's not do the surgery. Let's just rest and see what happens. And then they rested and it got better. Had he had the surgery, he probably wouldn't have pitched, like he did in 75, when he was elite again. And, he'd won the Cy Young in 73 and then 74 disaster. But, by not having the surgery in 75 and 76, he's Mr. Cy Young again. And then, Seaver had also injury problems too. He had a contender shoulder in 73, but pitched really well. And then he decided not to push it in 74. And then when he did, it was disaster. So these guys were having the injury problems. But with Seaver, what's really interesting, so it's a down year. He's got injury, but he's still 11-11 with a 3.20 ERA and 201 strikeouts.
Yeah,
that would be like all-star in baseball today.
Yeah, that's like Jacob deGrom.
Right.
Yeah. Minus about 8 victors.
So, Billy, the health issues are behind them as the All-Star break is approaching, but these guys seem to be doing pretty well this year in 75, aren't they?
Yeah, Palmer goes into the All-Star break 13-6, 2.26. He would finish 23-11. Seaver went in 13-5, 1.94. He'd finish 22-9. But did these guys start the All-Star game? No. Jerry Royce, our guy, started for the NL. He went 3 scoreless innings. And Vida Blue, Scott's guy, started for the AL. But Tom Seaver was elected to the All-Star game. Palmer was not because he pitched a few days earlier. And poor Tom Seaver, he pitched 1 inning and gave up a 3-run bomb to Carl Yastrzemski.
Isn't it interesting that back then they really tried to win the game so that they didn't use all the All-Star players? Now they want to use the entire lineup.
Yep.
Yeah, because remember when we were young, they always did pitch 3 innings. Like the starter would come out for 2 or 3 innings.
Yeah.
And then they would just mix and match, and there'd be a bunch of guys that didn't get in. You'd always be pulling for your team's guy to get in, but they didn't. They did play to win.
And everyone's going to go like 1 inning tonight. I don't know if you'll have a pitcher that goes 2 innings tonight.
Yeah.
Every major sports All-Star game they played to win up until maybe the last 10 years or so.
Well, they still play to win in the NBA, obviously.
NBA and NFL, yeah.
Exactly. But if you look at Mark was talking about Jim Palmer's injuries, not only does he win 23 games this year, but he goes on to win 20 games 3 more years after this as well. 300 innings in 3 of those 4 years. Just, an amazing, amazing athlete.
Yeah, both of them. And Mark Palmer went to the All-Star game as well. How did he do?
He didn't pitch. Yeah, it's like again these All-Star games. It's like we're here to win. We're going to go with 5 pitchers and that's it. And if you have like a Hall of Fame list of pitchers that don't get into the game, which is crazy. Even reserves.
Yeah, so the American League had only 8 pitchers on the team. 5 of them pitched. The 3 who didn't: Palmer, Raleigh Fingers, and Nolan Ryan.
Who were the MVPs of that All-Star game? Do you guys know?
Of that All-Star game, was it Yastrzemski?
No, I thought it was. I thought it was just Yastrzemski. Sort of odd names.
Huh?
Bill Madlock and John Matlack, co-MVPs.
Ah. Palmer and Seaver both go on to win the Cy Young in 75. Palmer does it again in 76. They end their careers with 3 each. Palmer goes into Cooperstown in 1990. Seaver 2 years later in 1992. I know we lost Tom a few years ago. Palmer's pushing 80. These guys will always be young and vibrant, and stud pitchers in my memory. I mean, they were godlike back then.
Palmer had that really high leg kick, you know?
I loved his windup.
If you want to know how good both of these guys were in their prime, you can ask another pitcher who was one of the best in baseball in 1975 and get his thoughts. Mike Torrez played 18 seasons in the bigs, won 185 games in his career, and in 1975 put it all together. His best season came in Baltimore with Earl Weaver's Orioles when he was 20-9 with a 3.06 ERA in, get this, 270 innings pitched, which included 16 complete games. We'll get into more of what Mike did in a bit, but first, let's just say hello. Hey, Mike, how you doing today? Where is home for you?
Hey, good, guys. I'm in Seminole, Florida, outside of the Tampa Bay area, between St. Pete Beach and Clearwater Beach.
Love that area. Love that area.
Yeah, it's beautiful.
Nice. You've been there for a while?
Going on 8 years.
For you, that's forever, isn't it?
Yeah. Because every year I had to move somewhere.
Exactly. Mike, speaking of 1 year, you spend 1 year in Baltimore, and it's a great one for you. But tell me a little bit about the ace of that staff, Jim Palmer. How good was he?
Oh, Jimmy was great. You know, he was a great, also a teammate. And, you know, it was really a super guy, and he knew how to pitch. And, you know, it was really funny because Weaver and him would always get in arguments, little nitpicking stuff that between the two, but always loved when Palmer would criticize the manager, you know, and Earl would get all upset. Damn you, Jim. You don't know what the hell you're talking about. Go sit down over there, damn it. But we used to hear it. The guys used to laugh because Palmer would kind of henpeck him a little bit and kind of get him riled up. And but we used to love seeing that. But Jim was a great competitor. He loved going out and pitching. He was could hit the spots really, really good, and had a real good curveball. And he didn't throw that many sliders, but he had a movement, a lot of good movement on his fastball, and it rose. You know, it was one of these type pitchers where his fastball would rise. And I don't know, I never asked him how he held it, but because I had my own, I had my sinker, slider, curveball, and change. So I had stayed with what I had, and you know, I just loved watching him pitch because he was really a great pitcher.
The other guy on the cover of SI from 50 years ago was Tom Terrific. You played with him at the end of your career, but I imagine you must have gone up against him many times when you were in St. Louis and Montreal, another Hall of Famer. What's it like as an opposing pitcher when you're going up against someone that good?
Well, you know, mentally, you have to really focus in on what your strengths are, knowing that, you know, I could not afford to give up, you know, hardly any runs. So mentality going in, facing these great pitchers, I always said, I cannot lose to these guys. I'm not going to lose to them. And that's how I went about it. And I knew that I could not give up, you know, 2-3 runs. If I could get by the second or third inning and get into the fourth inning, I was going to be there for the duration of the game. But if most teams, if I got knocked out, it was early in the game. You know, a little bit of wildness, but you know, if I get by the early innings, then I settled in and was able to, you know, complete the games and either win the game or lose it by 1-0 or 2-1.
You know, Jim Palmer had that unique leg kick. It wasn't as high as Juan Marshall, but it was pretty high. Did that help him pitching wise? Is it just, a pitcher always has to have something that makes them feel comfortable on the mound?
Yeah, Jimmy had that, you know what, a lot of times that left foot would come in and his arm action would be like right behind his foot, and it maybe covered his pattern, what I call pattern, when you let it go or follow through with that big leg kick. Most of the guys saw that big leg kick, right? And then when he came following through, he was following through right where his leg was. So I think that helped him because, it took a little bit of what the hitters look at when they're up there on the plate looking at the pitcher and they're trying to pick up something. Well, hell, they're picking up his foot, and then he's coming right over the top of his where he used to, he wasn't really a sidearmer. He came from right over the top and followed through. And I think that really helped him.
He didn't not just have this talent for pitching, but I think mentally his mental acumen was a real strength for him. I mean, he was very intimidating. Was that an important part of his game?
Yeah. Oh, yeah. For a pitcher, it is. You have to, set your sights, get mentally tough. There's a lot of times we didn't, starters didn't have our exceptional stuff every game, because if you threw 150, 170 pitches in a game and you struggled, well, and within 4 days rest, we're going to be a little stiff and sore. But if we could get by, like I said, the first 3 or 4 innings, things loosened up at the 5th, 6th, and guys used to say, we'd go at the bar and we'd go out of town. He says, "Damn, Torrez, you're throwing better in the 7th, 8th, and 9th innings than you were early." Well, hell yeah, because I knew I didn't have a good fastball, and I was just relying on, trying to stay with my slider, throwing sinkers and spotting my fastball and throwing a curveball occasionally. So I was just trying to keep hitters until I got a little snap and then loosened up. Because a lot of times, as a starter, you had stiffness in your shoulder, but you had to learn how to, maintain it, try not to overthrow and get by with the hitters and give them a different look every time. So that's what we used to do. And that's what I used to do because I knew that in every start, I was not going to be able to throw 97, 98. So I had to learn how to get hitters out with the 91, 92.
You touched on it just a little bit. What made Palmer such a great teammate?
Well, he was a great guy, and he was mellow. He wasn't the type of guy that rant and raved. He was a easygoing guy, easy to speak with and talk with. And that was really the key with him. He was just a pleasant person and such a great competitor as a pitcher that he was.
And then when you go to New York, going up to Tom Seaver, you go there, you pitch with him. Obviously, Scott mentioned that you had pitched against him. What was it like being his teammate?
Well, he was gutty. He was gutty as hell. And Seaver, loved the competition. He loved to compete. He was hard-nosed. He was a hard-nosed type pitcher. Different personality between Palmer and Seaver. Tommy was harder to really talk to than Palmer was to me. And, Jimmy opened up more to me than Seaver did. Of course, I guess Seaver thought I was setting my own pattern as well as he was. So he did what he had to do to mentally get ready, to pitch. And that's what I respected what he did. And he was a great, great pitcher and fun to watch. It was fun to watch him compete and pitch against, the other teams.
Mike, you come up in 67 with the Cardinals, and Bob Gibson is, of course, the ace of that staff. How important was he to your career?
Well, I didn't have a slider per se coming out of high school. I signed with the Cardinals out of high school. And then when I got called up, I saw Gibby throw a 1-0 shutout, and I believe it was against Atlanta. And he had a terrific slider, man. The slider was working that day. Unbelievable. The next day, or that evening after the game, he lockered right next to me. And I was fortunate enough to locker next to him. And I said, "Hey, Bob." "What?" He says, "What?" He says, "Hey, can you teach me how to throw that slider?" He said, "God, you rook." I said, "Yeah, I'll teach you, but you better be here at 2:00 tomorrow, and we'll work on it." I said, I'll be here. I said, "You better be here." That's what he talked to me. He said, "You get your ass here, and I don't want to be here, and then you're not here." So he worked with me for about a week and taught me how to throw the slider, and that added another pitch to my career at that time. And I had I think, a pretty damn good slider, guys told me.
You know, you're just a kid. You're a teenager. He's maybe the most intimidating pitcher in baseball history. You can even tell in your voice right there that he had a little bit of an edge to him. Was he intimidating to his teammates as well?
No, he was really a good teammate. He was kind of a no bull type guy. You know, he came straight at you. He said straight whatever he was going to tell you, and he didn't BS anybody. And you know, he was that type of a pitcher, and he took that to the mound where you know he was a competitor. I guess from the time growing up in Omaha, Nebraska, playing basketball and playing the sports that he did, you know, he was a tough guy. And guys, I mean, I saw Tommy Agee with the Mets in spring training. He stepped out of the box, and the very next pitch, Gibby hit him in the head. You know, because you know, he didn't like guys to step out of the box on him and stay in there. Let's go. You know, and guys, you know, and unbelievable. And I think Agee realized that, oh shit, I better not ever do that again.
You had a different way of doing things than Gibson. I think there was a game in '75 in June when you were facing the Yankees and Thurman Munson, and it was a very interesting exchange. Can you tell us about that?
Yeah. Thurman at that time was killing everybody with the Orioles. Palmer, he was hitting like 850 off everybody. And I'm the last pitcher to pitch the last game of that series. And I had mentioned something in the paper about, you know, if they dig in like they dug in against our hitters, I said, they better stay loose because I'm coming in there. And I'm not, you know, I'm not going to lay back and let them dig in like they did against our staff. So, and then Elrod Hendricks is catching me that game. And so I threw one up and in to Thurman, and Thurman says to Elrod, hey, what the hell is this guy's crazy? And then I threw another one up underneath his chin inside, you know, trying to get inside on him and, you know, come a little bit closer. And he told Elrod, he said, I'm gonna charge him out. He comes in again. Elrod said, well, go ahead. That crazy Mexican, he's a killer. He was in the Marines. And Thurman says, he was? And so he never said anything. But yeah, I went. In fact, I really went after everybody. I didn't care because Thurman was killing the staff. I'm telling you, he got 4 for 4, 3 for 4, 4 for 4. He was just manhandling our pitchers. So, you know, I took it. I said, no, I'm not going to let them kind of dig in like that on me. And then when I got traded to the Yankees, I was sitting in the steam bath, and Lord and behold, who comes in there? Thurman. I just joined the team. And, you know, I went in the sauna just to warm up a little bit because it was a cool day there in New York. And he has the beer, and he's sitting next to me, and he spits on the floor in that sauna. He says, hey, welcome, man. He said, thank you, Thurman. And he said, pitch like you did against me the rest of the season, we'll be all right. And I said, I will. That's the way I pitch. So we hit it off pretty good. We got, you know, to be friends. So, yeah. There was something I said, hey, I love pitching in, Thurman. You know that. I said, no, let's pitch everybody in. I don't give a – see, Don Drysdale was my idol with the Dodgers. And that's where I learned. He said to me one night when I was with St. Louis as a rookie, I was with Kurt Flood, and we went to a bar. And Lord and behold, who walks into the bar is, you know, Don Drysdale. And I went, wow, big guy's here. So he was my idol. And then he sat down, we started talking. I said, hey, Don, hey, what's made you successful in the big leagues pitching all these years? He said, Mike, I saw you pitch against us in Vero Beach in spring training. He said, look, big guy, you also, my height, he said, learn to pitch inside and, you know, keep the hitters off balance. And, you know, hitters don't like to be pitched inside because they like to extend their arms and everything, but learn to pitch inside to left-hander and right-hander. And exactly what I did. What I ended up doing, I asked him, how'd you do it? He said, when I first started, I started throwing about 30 pitches inside to guys that weren't playing every day. You know, they on the left side for me. I'll try to hit the inside corner as many times as I could. And then I said, turn around. And the hitters didn't like it because they said, Mike, damn it, don't hit me. You know, I said, I'm not going to hit you. I told him what I'm trying to do. I'm trying to learn how to pitch inside. and they would stand there for me. And once in a while, I'd get close to them. They go, God, come on. That's how I learned how to pitch inside the hitters. I'd have in between my starts, I'd have hitters that weren't playing. I'd pitch inside, try to hit the inside corner, and turn them around and hit the outside corner on them. So that's how I learned how to pitch inside. I wasn't scared to pitch inside either.
So, but in that incident with Munson, when he was your opponent, didn't you blow kisses at him, and that got him to?
Yeah, well, after Elrod came and said, Mike, he told me what he said. I said, well, I'm throwing kisses at son of a bitch. At that time, I didn't care. I was throwing him kisses, and I said, here, So, and he was pissed off at me. He said, oh well, I was throwing him kisses. So, we battled. That's all. It was I against him, and that's how it went down.
You played, looking over your career, Montreal, you played for Gene Mauch. Baltimore, you play for Earl Weaver. New York, you play for Billy Martin. Which one of those managers is the one that you remember the most? And how much different were they?
Well, Gene Mauch was he was like like a general. They call him the general, which he was real military style type guy, real tough, and who I enjoyed, who I thought was great, was Earl Weaver. He was funny, did a lot of crazy things. Billy was okay, but he got to where he'd start drinking, and he would turn from being an okay guy to get nasty. But Earl Weaver to me was I enjoyed as a manager the year I won 20 games, and but all in all, the managers were all a good bunch of guys. I mean, everybody had different styles, and just learn to pick up their style and pitch how they wanted you to pitch. I know Earl hated for pitchers to walk anybody. He was one of those. He was screaming at everybody about don't walk this guy, and he'd have a cigarette in his hand, smoking a cigarette in the dugout. Don't walk the guy. He used to have that real raspy little voice. Hey, come on, Dad, those strikes, damn it. So, and then Gene Mauch was, he was like no nonsense guy. Yeah, no, that's good. He come out to take you out and didn't want to say nothing to you. Just he put his hand out. Here, give me the ball. So, and then Billy kind of let you go. He let me go. When I won those 7 straight complete games, I think that he knew that I was able to do it, because I know I got in a big argument when I first came over to the Yankees. We had like 7 or 8 pitchers, and I wasn't pitching until like 7 or 8 days. And I was with the Orioles and also with Oakland. I was pitching every 4th day. But when I got to New York, I was like not, pitching. And then he took me out in one of the games, and I was really upset. And George Steinbrenner comes in as I'm leaving to leave the stadium, because I was teed off, and I'm leaving the stadium early. Well, Lord and behold, the elevator door opens up. Who walks coming out? This is George Steinbrenner. And he says, "Where are you going?" I said, "I'm getting the hell out of here." I said, "Damn, Billy took me out." And he said, "Whoa, come here. Let me talk to you." He said, "Man, hey, Mike, what's going on? I know I traded 3 guys to get you, but you haven't been pitching worth a darn." I said, "Well, hey, George," I said, "I'm not getting the ball until 7 or 8 days. I said, "I'm not that type of pitcher." And I said, if you look back on my record, I said, every 3rd or 4th day, I'm able to pitch. I'm a big, strong guy. I'm okay. I don't mind. Okay. And you know what? He reached in his pocket, gave me 4 $100 bills. Says, "Go have dinner on me." I said, "Hey, George, thanks." So I got in the elevator. He said, "Go ahead and go on," and no problem. So I'll talk to Billy. So the next day, Billy calls me in the office, gives me shit, and thought that I went up to the office. He thought I went up to the office to talk to George. I said, whoa, Billy, hold your horses. Damn it. I said, "Hey, I didn't go up to see George. George, I told him, he came down the elevator. He asked me what the hell was wrong, and I told him what was wrong. I said, you got 8 pitchers. You don't know who to use." I said, pitch me every 4th day here. That's what I was doing. And then he said, "All right, you're going to get the ball every 4th day." And that's when I won 7 straight complete games.
And
So,
no doubt in 77, Billy Martin must have loved you. You get 2 complete games in the World Series, and you catch the ball for the final out. How did that feel? Not just the games, but getting the final out of a series, in a series that had some other amazing things as well.
oh yeah, that's well, Reggie hit those 3 home runs, and knowing that we're in the World Series, every player since you're a kid growing up always dreamed of playing in the World Series. When I caught, when Lee Lacy tried to bunt on me and he popped it up, and because Nettles was playing back on third base, playing back on him, and when he popped it up, I saw it go up. Man, I was so happy. I said, "All right, we got this sucker." So I caught it, and that was it. The last out, we're world champions, and that just a feeling you cannot imagine, and the adrenaline going through you, how I felt, and knowing that I was a big part of us winning the World Series. And man, I was just, God, it's an unbelievable feeling, guys. It is. You cannot imagine, especially as the pitcher, and pitching and catching the last out of the World Series in two complete games. That was something special.
You talked about it just a second there with Reggie's 3 home runs in Game 6. What was it like to have a front row seat to that? What went on in the dugout when he'd come back?
Oh, well, hell, everybody was happy, because he was struggling in the start of the World Series. Billy sat him down on one of the games, and also in one of the playoff games in Kansas City. And he was struggling a little bit, and then I kind of woke him up, I guess. And then I think he hit a home run in the last at bat in L.A., and then we came back, and then he hit those 3 home runs here. So it was New York, and that was Reggie. He had to kind of egg him on. He was a kind of guy, like, he had to challenge him. He was a guy that challenged me, and that he would take that challenge, and that's the way Reggie was.
Mike, the way I see it, Reggie stole your glory. You could have been MVP of that World Series. 2 complete game wins, including the clincher. Guys don't go more than 6 innings nowadays.
Yeah, I know. Well, some of my teammates said I should have gotten it. And Reggie, on Old Timer Day game, listening to this, he sitting next to me. He said, "Mike, damn, I forgot. Man, you should have been co-MVP with me." And I said, "No, Reggie, I should have been the MVP." He said, "Oh, well, I mean, I would have been happy if we'd been co-MVPs because, man, 2 complete games. I forgot about that." I said, "Well, yeah, I know you forgot about it because you were thinking about those 3 home runs you hit." And I said, "You took my MVP because you always were kissy ass to all the writers in New York anyway, So, well, anyway, we had a great team, and we had a lot of fun. Reggie was a good guy. So it's no hard feelings. A lot of guys on our team didn't like him because a lot of the stuff that he would say, on the straw, the stairs to drink, and all this, everything. So a lot of things that he said, guys kind of did not like, and he had some run-ins with some of the teammates. But hey, once we crossed the white lines, it was baseball. It was nothing else. It was no fighting amongst us. But as a team and teammates, everybody fought together.
Winning fixes a lot of issues, doesn't it?
It sure does. Yeah, it sure does.
Now fast forward to the end of your career, and you've gone from being the pupil with Bob Gibson, and now you're the mentor to Doc Gooden, a 19-year-old pup. And you do everything you can to help this kid make the team, knowing that if he does well, it could be the end of your career, or at least your time with the Mets. And oh, by the way, Doc did pretty well. What was that like to be the teacher now?
Well, it was great. I tell you, in spring training, I know that we had they had to make a roster move, and I knew it was Craig Swan and Dick Tedrow, 2 other veterans that were on the team at that time. And I'm watching Doc, and Doc came out to center field. We'd be shagging balls. He'd be asking me, and I watched him pitch in spring training. I'm saying, man, this kid can pitch. God Almighty! So I'm looking and watching him all this games when he's pitching in spring training. I said, man, this kid can help us big time. And I said, and then he comes running out to me toward the end of spring training, He said, Mike. I said, Doc, what's up? He said, they want me to go back to AAA. I said, what? Who? Frank Cashin. He said, if I consider going back. I said, what? I said, Doc, you get your ass back, go see Frank and tell him you're not going to AAA. You're ready to pitch in the big leagues, big guy. And go back in there and tell him you're not considering even going to AAA. He runs back in there and tells him that he's not going to AAA, that Mike said, I'm ready to pitch in the big leagues. Frank Cashin calls me in. He says, Mike, what the hell did you do? I said, Frank, you don't see what I see? Come on, man. I've been in this game a long time. This kid is ready to pitch in the big leagues. He's phenomenal. You don't see the shit I see? Oh, I do, but we have a roster. I said, shit, get rid of either me or Craig Swan or Dick Tidrow. I mean, hey, you're going to have to do that. I said, this kid ready, Frank. I'm telling you. So he said, well, damn it, don't say any more to anybody. I said, okay, I won't. But then Doc come out and he thanked me. He said, thanks, Mike. He said, they're going to, and so they ended up waiving Craig Swan and Dick Tidrow. And I stayed with the team for a couple months, and then they ended up releasing me later because they had young kids that were coming up.
Right.
Yeah.
Did Swan and Tidrow send you a thank you?
I didn't say anything. I mean, to them, they may have read about it, but they were easygoing guys. They didn't. I think they hooked on with somebody else. I think so.
You knew it could be a roster move with you involved, though, but you just knew it was the right thing to do. It was more of a character issue for you.
Yeah, no, I saw that. I said, God darn, man, I see a kid like that throwing like this, and with the stuff that he had, I said, it's all big league stuff. That's not minor league stuff. That's all big league stuff to me. And I told Frank, I said, Frank, you don't see the things I see when he pitches? Yeah, but I said, well, I'll tell you what, he's ready. He's ready as you'll ever see. And so believe me, I tell you, I'm not saying it to blow smoke up your butt, but I said, Dwight is ready, buddy. So, and he had me when Frank Cashin was my general manager over in Baltimore. So I think he kind of believed a little bit in what I said.
75 was your best year statistically. 77, you won a World Series. But was there maybe a different year that was the most satisfying or fun for you in the big leagues?
No, you know what? Just getting into the big leagues was every kid's dream at first coming up to the big leagues. It's hard to that 20-win season in Baltimore, of course, but winning the World Series, there was icing on the cake. Every player, because a lot of great players never got to play in the World Series. Ernie Banks and those guys never got into the World Series. There's great players that never made it. Their teams never made it. But no, that was icing on the cake. In fact, I was so proud of myself because if I didn't pitch the way I did in the fifth game at Kansas City, most people don't remember that. Ron Guidry started that game. We were down 4-0 when I came in the second inning or third, and I held Kansas City scoreless for about 5 2/3 innings until we picked away and tied the game, and we ended up winning the game. And knowing that I had, shut Kansas City out in that fifth game, they score any more runs in that fifth game, we're not in the World Series.
Who was in your career, who was the most influential player or manager or scout or someone that you worked with, someone that might surprise people?
George Bamberger, the pitching coach with the Orioles. Great guy. And then he was a manager, with the Mets for a while, and then he went to Milwaukee. But George was a great pitching coach. And that's the year I won 20 games. And he worked with me in bettering the curveball. He worked with me on the curveball, all the other stuff. And there's times when that year, like I said, I didn't have good stuff at all. But it was always in his mind. He would stand next to me on the mound when I was before the game warming up. Great stuff, Mike. Great stuff. And I'm saying to myself, what the hell does he see? What the hell? What? He put confidence in me and my mind. I said, man, I don't have shit I don't see what, but he was great stuff, Mike. Great stuff. Take that out there, man. Take that out there, and let's come on, let's do it. And I'm saying to myself, what the hell does he see? I mean, I felt, I was stiff and I wouldn't loose as good as I should be, but he kept believing. And I don't know how he worked with the other pitchers, but he had 4 20-game winners, and he was a great pitching coach to me.
So you win a World Series, and then all of a sudden you're declared a free agent. How tough was it, or how exciting was it to then go to the Red Sox? You know where I'm getting at here.
Honestly, I wanted to stay with the Yankees, but I think at that time the general manager was Gabe Paul. Gabe Paul was the assistant general manager, and I don't know whether he had a lot to say, but they was telling me that I was telling George, or the agent that I had, Gary Walker at the time, he was telling me, well, Gabe doesn't want to sign. He thinks it was only a 1-year deal, the way you pitched for us. And I said, bullshit. I said, just look and see. And Yankees only offered me, I think, a 4-year deal, which was a lot less money. And Boston offered me $2.4 million, a 7-year guaranteed contract. So I ended up taking the money.
And then we all know in '78. Walk me through the at-bat with Bucky Effendent.
Oh, wow. Well, you know what? I pitched a great game. I shut out the Yankees for 7 2/3 innings. Then Roy White blooped a single, and then also Chris Chambliss blooped a little single on me. And I had 2 outs, and I was in a really good groove. And then Bucky fouled off that ball on his foot, and it took about 5 minutes. And I should have thrown a couple pitches, in between while he was out. And I didn't. I stood there and kind of just watching what the hell was going on. I should have thrown a couple pitches, just to, in my mind. But anyway, I didn't throw any pitches. Then when Bucky got back into the batter's box, I was trying to throw a fastball down and in on him like a sinker, and then I was going to throw a slider the next pitch away from him. And my fastball didn't. It was caught too much middle of the plate, and didn't have the sink that I wanted on it. And he hit it was a pop fly. I thought he hit, and it didn't sound good at all. And I thought, and Yaz is hitting me the way it sounded. Yaz is, hitting his glove like he's going to catch it. And then he started backing up, and then his back hit the wall. He looked up, and then his head fell, and I went, I can't believe that damn ball went out. And then I saw, I make a long story short, years later, Mickey told me that he gave him a cork bat. And Bucky, to this day, I kid him. He and I are good friends. It doesn't matter because that's history now. But I said, Bucky, you used the cork bat on me, huh? Yeah, no, I said, yeah, Mickey told me it was cork. I said, if you go back and look at that game, that the kid, bat boy, sprinted out to the batter's box, picked up the bat, and ran it back in the dugout. If you look at the old films, and you can see that I said, and I even told Bucky, I said, that bat boy came and got that bat off the so nobody could check it. Because I was going to say, let's check that bat, because it didn't sound good. And it was already gone. It was over. And then, of course, Zimmer came out and took me out.
So we do a trivia segment on the show called 50-50. So they're doing a remake of the Naked Gun movie. It's coming out in a few weeks with Liam Neeson. Here's your trivia question. The original Naked Gun movie that came out in the late 80s with Leslie Nielsen. True or false? Jim Palmer, your teammate, and another one of your teammates on a different team appeared in that movie.
False.
No, it is true. Jim Palmer played an announcer in that movie. Surprise, surprise.
Oh, I didn't see him. It was his voice.
Yeah, very tan. And you know who was sort of the bad guy? There's a big baseball scene at the end of the movie, and the bad guy is going to shoot the Queen of England, and that bad guy was Reggie Jackson.
Oh, Jesus. I didn't know that.
So he's in an Angel's uniform in that one.
Bobby now. That's a good one. Yeah, I didn't. I remember seeing that. I don't remember it, but I have to
If
go
you
look.
get a chance, get a kick because there are a lot of baseball players in that movie at the end.
Oh, okay. All right. Beautiful.
It's a fun movie. Yeah.
Hey, Mike, we talked about the highs of 77, the lows of 78. One of the great things about athletes and pitchers and stuff is, like you said, it's all history. How do you put those kind of things in perspective now, 50 years later, when you look back at these things? Is it all just part of one great ride for you?
Well, yeah, you look back and the game now has changed so much. I really don't recognize it as the way we played the game because the game has changed a whole lot, and especially with pitching today. I don't know, the pitchers today are just don't come inside to the hitters like they used to. But now I look back, just thankful to God. He gave me a good arm. I never got hurt, so I pitched all those years and never had a sore arm. I mean, I had a sore arm, but nothing drastic. But, I stayed in there with it and fought the days I had to fight. And looking back, it was a great, great moment in my life for 20 years playing professional baseball.
Yeah, not too bad for a kid from Topeka, huh?
Yeah, that's true. Yeah, in fact, I tell people I never even played high school baseball, and I think that saved my arm. We had a big high school, Topeka High. We had about 3,500 student body, but they had quit the baseball high school program 2 years right before I got there. But then when I signed with the Cardinals, wouldn't you know, they started the baseball program the very next year after I graduated.
So where did you pitch if you didn't pitch in high school?
American Legion, just American Legion.
And they'd have scouts that go to American Legion games and would say,
back
"Hey,
then, yeah. And then I think where they saw me was when I made the Kansas All-State American Legion team, and I pitched against the Nebraska All-State American Legion team. I struck out 19 out of the 21 batters, and that's where all the scouts come running, and ended up signing, with the Cardinals.
Well, I tell you, Mike, in my estimation, and maybe it's my age, you pitched in the best time for baseball. It was
I think
everything.
So. I think that era, the 60s, 70s, even the 50s, 60s, and 70s was a great era for baseball. And the tradition that they had, back then. And the old timers, when I was in the big leagues, when they had the old time day, they have the old timers come in from yesterday to come in and sit with us and tell stories. That's made it really, really great. Today, they don't do that with the Yankees. When I've gone to the old timers day again, they put us in another room. We don't even get to sit in the regular locker room that the players are in. They keep us away. I don't know. They did that. I don't know why, but that was to me when I was a big leaguer and coming in with all the old time that played the game. That was special. That was really something special on that particular day, because each one of the old timers would locker with you, and you sit down and you talk with one another, and then it'd be like a powwow. All the old timers get together and we'd hear all the stories, and that's what made it special on Old Timers Days game. But like I said, unfortunately, the Yankees don't do that. We don't get to sit in the clubhouse with the day's players.
Yeah, it just seems like a lot of the players don't understand the past and don't know the greatness of guys like Mike Torrez. I'm not saying they don't want to learn it, but it just seems like that's been eliminated, and that's really sad because guys like you are invaluable to the growth of the game and for the pitchers of nowadays.
Exactly. Yeah. No, I know. You hear a lot about that. A lot of the kids talk to guys that were in big leagues a lot, like Richie Allen. A kid that grew up in Philadelphia area. Richie Allen? The kid said, no. You never heard of Dick Allen? No. I said, and you're a first baseman? The kid didn't know. He just, didn't bother to read or, I guess, read about the history of baseball.
50 years ago on the cover of SI is Tom Seaver and Jim Palmer, and it says, baseball's toughest pitchers. I think you can put Mike Torrez right along next to them as one of baseball's toughest guys throwing the ball back in the 70s. Mike, Really enjoyed our talk down with you and going down memory lane. Thanks for joining us today on the Past Our Prime podcast.
Thank you guys for bringing me on, man. It's a lot of fun. Thank you.
Hey, Mike, we never know when we get a guest. You are just absolutely fantastic. I mean, thank you. We've had guys like Jim Kern and Jerry Royce. You guys are just the best, man. Thank you.
Thank you, man. I appreciate it. Hey, but listen, let me tell you guys. Let me ask you guys, who's the winningest Mexican pitcher in baseball, Major Leagues?
Winningest Mexican pitcher. I'm going to guess Mike Torrez.
Not Fernando.
I was going to say Fernando. That was my initial. I was going to say Fernando.
No, I won 187 total games.
Yeah.
Wow.
And I think Fernando won 172, something like that.
Yeah,
so I am the winningest Mexican pitcher in Major League Baseball.
And that should be celebrated.
Yes.
Everywhere, man. It should be, man. I mean, there's a lot of Hispanic ball players in. You're the number one winningest pitcher of the heritage. I mean, that should be celebrated.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Yeah.
My God.
Yeah. Proud.
Something to be proud of.
Well, we have Torrez Mania here.
Yeah.
Well, thanks, guys. I appreciate it.
Thank you, Mike.
Okay.
Mike. Thank you so much.
Yeah. You guys have a good day.
Thank you.
You do the same.
We're going to let Mike go, even though his tee time got rained out today. And we're going to talk a little golf ourselves. In the British Open from 1975, the weather there was also not good. Let's move on. The Beast brought out his best. There was a time early in his career when Tom Watson was known for one thing, blowing leads. But that changed, and maybe his entire career trajectory changed as well when he won an 18-hole playoff and the British Open in 1975, beating a 25-year-old Aussie by the name of Jack Newton. Mark, tell us about this runner-up in 75, Jack Newton.
Well, he's an Aussie, Kadai might, and he had success, early on, in Australia, and then in Britain. He was in the British PGA, where he won 3 times in the mid-70s. He finishes obviously runner-up in the 75 Open Championship and that great playoff that they had. And then he won, I think, in 78 on the PGA Tour. But I think he played in a number of events in the 79 Australian Open. But in 1983, he is nearly killed in a fatal accident when he walked into the spinning propeller of an airplane. He lost his right arm, but he survived. And then he ended up working golf-related jobs the rest of his life. He died in April 2022 at the age of 72.
But Mark, he also taught himself to play golf one-handed, swinging the club with his left hand in a right-handed stance, and he typically scored in the mid-80s. And that's obviously after losing his arm and an eye.
Well, when that's what you've done your whole life, you figure out ways to keep doing it.
Just amazing, man.
Yeah, but you don't necessarily learn to do it and shoot, like a 16, 17 handicap. That's impressive.
I guess they said there was a rainstorm going on at the time, and there were other safety things that should have been used. The doctors gave Newton a 50-50 chance, just like my trivia, of surviving. and he spent several days in a coma, 8 weeks in intensive care. So, I mean, I'm surprised they haven't done a movie about this.
Right?
I know, Mark. I thought that exact same thing.
This would be great. And he scored in the mid-80s after when he was playing one-handed. He could still play really good golf.
And he was a total character. They talk about he was drinking and smoking all throughout the round of golf with Watson. Watson goes on to have a Hall of Fame career, Billy, and he could thank the British Open for much of that.
Yeah, didn't he win like 3 of those?
5.
Look at that. Yeah, but that was his first one when he won against Newton, which took an 18-hole playoff. And a number of years earlier, the playoff used to be 36 holes.
Oh, my God.
They made it down to 18, and they were still tied in the playoff going into the 18th hole. And they were playing, like Mark said about the Cessna situation, they played in rain all day that day.
Yeah.
But he made the par on the 18th, and I watched the shot. Newton shot perfect. It was like a 20-foot shot, and then slid left. Game over. Watson's first major win.
Yeah, and that kind of, for lack of a better word, propelled him to a quite a career.
Intended, right?
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah.
Catching Connors in the stretch. Last week we spoke at length about the shocking win by Arthur Ashe over Jimmy Connors to win Wimbledon, and then spoke with Rex Miller, the director of the film Citizen Ash, about Ash's what Ashe was like both on and off the court. A really in-depth look at a wonderful humanitarian. This week, Ashe writes a synopsis about his 2-week run at Wimbledon. And Bill, nobody thought he was going to win this except
Arthur Ashe. He said, I believed I'd win. He didn't think he was going to win. He thought he would win. He came in as 11-2 underdog. But not only he said he felt from his first match against Brian Gottfried, he said he was scared at first, wasn't sure if he should be there, but he finally realized that Gottfried couldn't do anything right and he couldn't do anything wrong. So he started to feel it. He said, oh, I got into the zone, which comes from an old Twilight Zone TV show that Mark knows a lot about. It means playing out of sight, out of this world. And it also helped that he felt he could out-tactician Connors, which he obviously did, but he did get a little help in believing he could win from the old Davis Cup captain, Dennis Ralston. Ralston made 2 calls to California to talk to Ashe about instructing him on how to beat Connors. So the whole time, Ashe, even though we're thinking he's a big underdog, knew he had a chance to win, not just psychologically, but on the court as well.
You know, Arthur wins the first 2 sets easily, but Jimmy wins the third. And Mark, you asked Rex Miller last week, the momentum was clearly now with Connors, but to Ashe, his reaction to Connors winning the third set was what?
Well, you know, he had what he said was a detached observation. It was about time that Connors got hot. It was almost comforting for Ashe to know, because it violated his sense of normalcy that he could just beat him too easily, in 3 sets. So it was no problem for him to rebound. I knew this was going to happen. I was going to see the good Jimmy Connors. So now I could relax and know this isn't some crazy out-of-body experience, and I could go about and take command of the match and win.
Arthur wrote about how Connors is perceived on tour and what his manager Bill Reardon is doing, and he didn't think it was good. Get a load of this. He writes, but Connors has paid a dear price for letting Bill Reardon maneuver him. In effect, Connors has traded in his soul. He is nearly friendless among the players. He offends the public with vulgarity and foul language. His admirers compare him to Muhammad Ali, but Ali was never so insensitive or short-sighted as to insult the paying public. Somehow I feel that Jimmy set out to fill some role that had been created for him, but that along the way he forgot where the acting took over from reality. He has fulfilled the image and made a villain of himself, and that is a sad thing for a 22-year-old boy to be. Worse, he seems to revel in it. So Arthur not pulling any punches there. Rex said that they were somewhat friendly prior and then did become friends, or at least, got along just fine later in their careers. I think Jimmy mellowed at some point. I don't know when that would have happened. Maybe once you're no longer the number one guy, you kind of take a little piece of humble pie. But yeah, Connors and his manager did not care about making friends on the tour. That is for sure.
But you know what I learned from that Rex Miller interview? How could anybody dislike Arthur Ashe?
Right.
How could anybody? How could Connors, no matter what you think on the court, how could anybody dislike Arthur Ashe? It seemed like all he did was try to be the best human being he could be.
I mean, I remember when Curry Kirkpatrick told us about Connors and Ashe, and basically he intimated that Connors, being from St. Louis in the 60s, his grandmother, maybe some race issues there. So you're kind of seeing like the turning of the tide, even in like a microcosm of Connors maybe thought lesser of Ashe in some ways, and Arthur won him over. And that really was Arthur's, that was his specialty. That was his superpower, is that he could win people over by just calmly talking to them. And it was a real gift.
Now let me ask, and Mark, you could probably answer this. You guys both could. In that match at Wimbledon, remember when I'll say the Holyfield Tyson fight, that after a while, Tyson finally started to realize he couldn't get to him and it got into his head. Do you think that Ashe eventually was getting into Connor's head because of all the drop shots and the lob shots, and basically that sort of turned the tide with Connor's mind?
Well, I think the fact that, Connors was unbeatable and he loses that first set 6-1, he's like, oh my God. And he went to more, like you said, the junk game. So it's
Yeah.
like you're facing like, a pitcher that's throwing like, 80 miles an hour, but you still can't hit him. And it's frustrating. And then not only to lose 6-1 in the first set, but to lose 6-1 in the second set, So had he bounced back and won the second set 7-5 as opposed to the third set, maybe the match turns differently. But you're down 2-0 now. You finally win a third set, but that means you still got to win two more. That's a lot of pressure.
I used to say all the time that 90% of Tyson's fights in his prime were over. They were hoping he wouldn't show up.
Yeah.
As soon as he stepped through the ropes, they were like, "Uh-oh, he looks mad."
Yeah. But Holyfield learned that if you could withstand the first few rounds,
yes,
you could get Tyson to get out of that. He realized he can't knock you out with one punch. That would make him a boxer. And then Holyfield just picked him apart. So, I mean,
well, two things are, I love Tyson's quote about everyone has a game plan until you punch him in the face. All right.
It's a great quote.
So Holyfield got punched in the face and Mike was like, uh-oh, he's got a game plan.
Got a jaw.
And then I think it was Steve Springer who said on the show how Tyson never came from behind to win a fight ever in his career.
Oh, wow.
Yeah, and I was like, oh my God. I mean, the greats all did, right? Ali.
Because he was never behind.
He was never behind.
Obviously against Holyfield he was, and he was also against Lennox Lewis. Lennox Lewis just outclassed him. But for the most part, when was Tyson ever behind in a fight?
Not very often. But he was against those guys and against Buster Douglas. Could she have been saved? We go back to the tragic story of Ruffian. Had Dave Johnson on a couple of weeks ago to talk about the match race between Ruffian and Foolish Pleasure. Bill, we know around the half-mile mark, she breaks her right leg. Take us through what they tried to do for her while she was still on the track.
Dr. Manuel Gilman, he tried to put an emergency air boot cast to hold the shattered bones and stop the bleeding. Unfortunately, it didn't really work that well on Ruffian because Ruffian was still in race mode and had been continuing to try to run through that. So she was jerking around, but they did get the blue bus out there and get her on that to get her out of the track much quicker than most people ever really realize.
Yeah, Mark, they finally get her into an ambulance and bring her back to the barn. What happens next?
Well, they decided they want to ice the leg. And that is, it turned out it might have been controversial because she was hemorrhaging really bad. And they thought that the icing would be important. But, the water becomes polluted because of all the contaminants from the wound. So it actually only makes it worse. It might have been better if they just done a sterile dressing, and under compression to prevent excessive swelling. But, hindsight's 2020. And that just exacerbated the problem.
So yeah, the water, she gets infected. They finally are able to sedate her, calm her down a little bit. And while out, they decide they can't operate in the barn, Bill. So they transport her to the hospital. At this point, there still is some hope that they can save her.
That's the tough thing because they put her in surgery. You can't keep giving a horse anesthesia. But after surgery, everything's thinking good. They actually pounded a plate into the bottom of her shoe to try to stabilize her legs. But she got up and just kept going crazy again. She started violently struggling again, kicking walls and hurting the around the recovery stalls. The cast came off. The boot that was attached to her foot came apart. Nothing worked. And we all know what the decision that was made soon after that.
Yeah.
Finally, they make the call. It's just too much for the incredible horse to overcome. They call the owner of the horse. It's after 2 a.m. Dr. Harthill phones Stuart Janney and says, "We apprised Mr. Janney of the prospect," said Harthill. He said, "Doctor, she is too great to go through what you say is going to be the eventuality of necrosis and gangrene. I'm a realistic man, and I have been in the horse business long enough to know you can do so much, and that's as far as you can go." And he thanked us very much. At 2:20 a.m. on July 7th, 1975, Ruffian was given a massive dose of phenobarbital. She was dead in 5 seconds. When the news became known, thousands who had never been closer to Ruffian or any horse for that matter than their television wept. So I think this might be the horse racing story besides Secretariat. It's like the antithesis of Secretariat.
Yep.
But I think this story just somehow struck a nerve with the sports world, and 50 years later,
Still does.
have found it just to be a fascinating story. I mean,
and Scott, you had mentioned it last week that I know, we'll get to the point where people talk about how, how did they not save the horse? There were people out there, men and women, that love this horse more than the world itself. They did everything they could to save this horse. And let's say, take out the love. You mentioned last week, you and Mark both did, that if she went into stud, or what got to live and sire horses, how much more money would she have made? They love that horse.
Yeah. Yep. Oh, tragic story. Mark, you got an ad for us?
Well, I do. We'll go from horses to sharks. There's an ad for a book from Sports Illustrated Books, Little Brown Sharks, The Silent Savages by Theo W. Brown. How Sharks Behave, How Man Might Control Them. This is the subject of a new book by a veteran diver and researcher. For $7.95 you can get this book. Now, sharks books, why would they be promoting a book about sharks in the summer of 75? I just can't figure it out.
Mm-hmm. There was a movie that people were seeing over and over and over again about a shark.
With the great line, we're going to need a bigger boat.
Yep. A designated disadvantage. The DH now part of baseball, but only in the American League and not for pitchers in the minors either. But surprisingly, not all of them. You would think NL teams would want their pitchers hitting, but most do not, except the Reds minor league teams, and that includes Indianapolis. One reason for the DH, pitchers like Pat Zachary, who are not very good with a bat. He is the best pitcher in the league, 7-3 and a 2.32 ERA, but he doesn't have a hit all season. He's 0 for 24. Not good with the stick. He would go on to win Rookie of the Year in 1976 for the Reds, going 14-7 with a 2.74 ERA. He'd spend 10 seasons in the majors, finishing with a career ERA of 3.52, but he never did learn to hit. Listen to this. In 318 career at-bats, he had 36 hits, all of them singles. That's a 113 batting average. So not
I know for a pitcher, that's not awful.
It's pretty awful. He's not Shohei Ohtani. He's not even Clayton Kershaw. He's you would think that in 318 career bats, you'd
luck into a double.
You'd hit one ball that fell in and you got a double out of it.
Well, especially since you're a pitcher and you might be able to figure he's going to throw this in this situation, because that's what I would do.
Right.
One of my favorite players growing up was a good hitting pitcher, Rick Rhoden.
Oh, yeah.
I loved Rick Rhoden because he could hit.
My first favorite player, Earl Wilson of the Tigers, was a pitcher. He ended up with between 35 and 40 career homers. It was a good
thing.
And this won't surprise anyone that a guy by the name of Ken Brett was a pretty good hitter.
Oh, yes, he was. Yeah.
Elsewhere, Mark, one of the Tigers' better pitchers of the early 70s was changing things up, and I know they're about to lose 19 in a row, but this was a good week for your Tigers.
It sure was. The Tigers were in the process of a 9-game winning streak, which I completely forgot because that's going to get overlapped by a 19-game losing streak that's just around the corner. And even with that 9-game winning streak, they're still, I think, tied for last place in the division. But, Joe Coleman tries to change stuff up. From 71 to 73, they got him in the Denny McClain trade to the Washington Senators. He was like one of the best pitchers in baseball. From 71 to 73, he was 62-38. And here's the amazing stat. In that 3-year period, he had 38 complete games in a day. In 74, he went 14-12. His ERA was over 4. In 75, he was 10-18 with an ERA well over 5. But he decides to change stuff up here. And the whole thing is haste makes waste, but not in this case. So what he decides to do is start speeding stuff up, starts trotting back and forth from the mound. he had a slow motion delivery. He tries to speed it up a bit, and it works initially. I mean, he beats the White Sox 3-0. His wife Carolyn was saying that he had no confidence. He had to do something. He had to go there and be confident, not cocky. And then he ended up, I think, beating the White Sox again 2-1. So, he had a good stretch there, but his best years were behind him. And even though the Tigers are on a roll right now, the worst is yet to come.
Yeah. Yep. And Coleman just passed about 10 days ago.
Right. He died. Yeah. Right. On July 9th. 78 years old, I believe.
Billy, anything else in the majors of interest?
Yeah, it's not a as heartbreaking story as Mark with Coleman dying, but a great pitcher was relegated to the bullpen after being hit hard again. Who do you think that guy is? Great pitcher, great mound presence. Bob Gibson.
Oh gosh.
You know what's coming to an end because you won't. When we think of Bob Gibson, we think of intimidating and dominant and great winner and great leader. Yep, relegated to the bullpen.
And a mentor from Mike Torrez.
That's right.
Spoke to earlier, a huge impact on Torres's career. We talked about Billy Martin in June with Mr. Ranger Tom Grieve, and a couple of weeks later we saw the name pop up again, but it wasn't the Billy Martin we knew from baseball. Instead, a player at UCLA by the same name, and now a full article on him, Bill. Who is this guy?
Billy Martin's a player at UCLA, and he patterns his game just like Jimmy Connors. Same temperament on and off the court. He blows into his own hands through the racket. He's battling opponents and linesmen. He was just I'll let Mark take the UCLA stuff, but this kid was great. And he also got to, since they were compared to Jimmy Connors, when he went pro, he lost to Connors in his first tournament in 1975. Then he partnered with Connors in 76 in a doubles loss in the Denver WCT. So Billy Martin was a guy that was up and looked like he'd be on his way to maybe being as successful as Connors on the court. Just didn't take off like Connors did.
I thought it was really weird that George Steinbrenner flew out to UCLA just to fire Billy Martin from
Yes. That was an odd twist in that article.
It really was.
Yes.
But no, so in 75, he wins the NCAA singles championship as a player. He had a 19-0 match record that year. But his real success came as a coach. He became the UCLA tennis coach in 1994. And he's got like a career record of 657 wins, 166 losses. That's almost an 800 winning percentage. He had 23 top 5 finishes. He led him to one national championship in 2005. But just, an icon. He had 9 consecutive 21 seasons. Just an icon of a coach at UCLA. I mean, belongs, with Wooden and even Al Skates get more pub, but Billy Martin is right on that tier.
No question. Something about the water over in Westwood that gets some of these college coaches phenomenal, just phenomenal. Pele is breaking attendance records all over the United States since signing with the New York Cosmos. For example, in Washington, they had a crowd of over 35,000 fans. 2 nights later, without Pele, 2,000. Now that's called drawing power. He denies that he came out of retirement for the $4.5 million. What was his motivation to come to New York, Billy?
Well, he said he could have got more money if he stayed in Brazil. He came out because he wanted to bring soccer and make it more popular in the United States. He was in New York and he saw kids playing on the street and he thought, no, I can do some work here to help bring soccer's popularity here.
The front office for the Cosmos was 7 people. Then they signed Pele. It went to 20 because there was such a demand for tickets and appearances and all that kind of stuff. So ticket sales alone won't pay for his salary. They're going to go to Europe and have some big matches in front of European fans. But so far, Pele worth every dollar. For the record, Mark.
I've got David Thompson. He signs a 5-year, $2.5 million contract with the Denver Nuggets. He was actually the first pick in the NBA draft by the Atlanta Hawks. That is the first time that the number 1 overall pick in the draft was not signed by an NBA team.
Wow. And that only set the Hawks back about 50 years.
Yeah, well, the Hawks are always 50 years behind.
They have had a rough go of it. Who else? Didn't they have someone else they drafted and didn't sign?
Isn't it Marvin Webster as well?
Ah, that's right. The racer. Yeah.
Great nickname.
George McInnes signs a 6-year, $3.2 million no cut, no trade contract by the 76ers. He said prior to this signing, he can't believe he's making this much money. Heck, I used to play for nothing. So these guys are getting money they never even dreamed. At least now guys are like, oh, I want to be in the NBA and and sign a contract, like Shea did for $280 million, $70 million a year. Back then, they didn't even think about playing for money in the 60s and 70s. It was just now where they're starting to like, ooh, this is pretty great. Faces in the crowd, Bill.
Mitch Mooney from Seaside, Oregon. He's the first golfer to win state high school, junior, and amateur championships in the same year. He's also the youngest player to win the amateur in its 72-year history. So you figure big things going to happen for Mitch Mooney. He did turn pro, played in 1980. He was in 21 tournaments, only finished 4 of them, made just over $2,000.
Yeah.
Which, to be honest with you, just to be able to make it and say you did that is fantastic. But it just shows you how tough it is to transfer that from high school or college into being a professional.
So difficult. Just the difference from that level to that next level is we all did this. You ever guys play in a league where like there's just someone who's so much better than everybody?
Yes.
You're like, oh, I don't want to face Kenny Whitworth. That guy throws 75. You know what I mean?
No, that was me. I didn't want to face me. I was so dominant. Oh, not really.
Yeah, so it just shows that then you get to the next level, and there's always going to be someone better usually. So move on to the 19th hole, Billy.
This is about Ruffian. This is from the old L. Ted Frigard or Frigard. The owners, trainers, and veterinarians who handled the injured ruffian must have been barbarians. We don't kill humans when they break a leg. Why kill such a beautiful animal? The excuse was that she was suffering horribly, but so do humans when they break a leg and must be operated on. Hadn't they ever heard of pain-killing drugs?
Yeah, but there's a difference. Horses cannot recover from a broken leg.
That's
the
right.
bone will heal in a human leg. It won't in a horse's leg. The horse's legs are so thin compared to human legs.
And
they
you
have
can't
so much weight on their body.
Put on a different leg.
Yeah, right. And they have so much weight on that body compared to a human body.
Yeah, and as we've mentioned, I mean, I will say this, in 50 years, I am surprised that we haven't figured out a way to make a horse be able to survive a certain falls, and maybe they have made progress. I don't know, but to think that they didn't do everything possible to save Ruffian is just ignorant.
Right.
Yeah, like Ruffian came in and they just went, well, nothing we can do here. Go get coffee and I'll kill her.
Yeah. All right. Now you got PETA calling and they're going to get.
Yeah. I mean, come on.
I'll take decaf.
Exactly.
Oh my God.
Make sure to go to In-N-Out and grab me a double. This will only take 5 minutes.
5 seconds.
Oh
5 seconds. Yeah.
You guys.
Hey, hold on. Hey, Scott, hold on. This will only take me 5 seconds. Just go start the car. Come on.
Well, this guy wanted to kill Ed Kranepool. The story on Ed Kranepool was a waste of space. Kranepool has never done anything to deserve an article on this SI. His batting average, which at this point was well over 300, will be under 300 come September. As for his being a vintage Met, he's like the TV show Gunsmoke. You forget about it, but it comes back every year. Carl Weissapal. Carl,
did you say Gunsmoke?
Festus and Mark are coming for you.
Remember when Mark used to look like Festus?
I never looked like Festus. Never.
Right. Were you a Gunsmoke guy, Mark?
Oh, more so after the show, not when it's prime, but in reruns.
All right, that's it. Let's say goodbye, shall we? Bill, you first.
Goodbye. You guys have a great day. Another really, really fun show.
It was. It really was. Mark, next week, who's on tap?
Next week, Amy Alcott, one of the great LPGA golfers, and can make a mean sandwich.
That's what I've heard.
How do you know that, Mark?
because CBS did a feature on her. She owned a deli in Westwood, and she'd go in and work the deli.
Want to thank Mike Torrez for stopping by and talking about the two cover guys for this week, Jim Palmer and Tom Seaver. And I will edit that out if Mike Torrez doesn't show up tomorrow morning. I'm Scott Johnston, and we are past our prime.